Wherever you are on your road to retirement, we're here to help you stay on course. Welcome to Mason Street Retirement Insights, the show dedicated to helping you plan your financial future.
What is your biggest concern? People are very focused on the amount of money that they have saved, but it's really about the income that we generate. Income is what's going to drive lifestyle. And so the income strategies that we utilize are what's key.
And now, here's your host, Sean Mason.
Welcome into Mason Street Retirement Insights. My name's Casey. I'm alongside Sean every week here on the show, asking him those big retirement questions that we all have. Sean, great to see you. How we doing, my friend?
We're doing really good, Casey. I'm excited to be here. You know, I love talking with our community every week.
I love it too, and I'm very excited for our show today because we're going to do something a little different for Memorial Day weekend. I'm very, very excited about it, but before we get there, I just want to mention if you've been feeling stuck, if you've been feeling uncertain, or you just want to know whether the decisions you're making today are actually moving you toward that life that you want to live in retirement, this show is a great place for you to start thinking a little differently, and a great reminder that you don't have to figure it all out alone. 559-847-0039 is our phone number, and Sean is here to have a conversation with you. He's got decades in the financial industry, and he is ready to talk with you about whatever your specific situation may be and help you figure out just how he can help you move forward. Isn't that right, Sean? Talk to us about what your initial meeting process is like with your client, what that looks like, and what people could expect if they give us a call today and set up some time to talk with you.
It's really a good experience for people. So often people are just feeling like they don't know what they don't know, so that can be concerning. They're trying to put this whole thing together and make sure that it's as great as it can be. And often if they just have a conversation and talk it out, things start coming together. And we're just going to make sure that we address those elements, those different areas that we got to be identifying. A lot of times that's just a great start. Just let's talk about those things that we got to be thinking about and planning right out of the gate.
559-847-0039. That's our phone number for you. Again, if you have $500,000 or more saved for retirement, I encourage you to pick up the phone, give us a call, claim some time on Sean's calendar. He set aside a limited number of spots this week just for our radio listeners to connect with him. So one more time, that number to do it, it's 559-847-0039, or you can find us online. We are at MasonStreetRetirementInsights.com. All right, Sean, on this show, we talk a lot about freedom, and not just financial freedom, but the kind of freedom that comes from clarity and preparation and making intentional decisions over time when it comes to our retirement. And one thing that we both know is that perspective matters, because sometimes it only takes one conversation or one unique experience or one shift in how you see things to change your entire direction. So like I said at the top of the show, I want to do something a little different today because it is Memorial Day weekend. And Sean, you got to have a very, very cool experience recently that I've been dying to hear about. You and your wife got to take a little trip to Palm Beach to visit Mar-a-Lago, and you actually got to meet Donald Trump Jr. So I want to start today by you just telling us about this experience. What was that like? Tell me all the details.
Yeah, we were invited, really feel very fortunate for it, but we were invited to participate in a group interview with Don Trump Jr. at Mar-a-Lago. And, wow, Mar-a-Lago alone, what an extraordinary property, expansive, rolling lawns, it's right on the ocean. Of course, they have golf course, tennis course, all the amenities you could imagine.
Yeah.
But you first drive in there, we entered in on a bus with a group of advisors that were going to be involved in this group interview. Mm-hmm. And rolling in on the bus, and it's just what you'd expect, armed guards. They're walking the dogs around the bus. They're utilizing the mirrors to look under the bus.
Just a little bit of security, just a little bit.
Just a little bit of security. They actually had done a background check on us previously, obviously. Yeah, but then they came on. I can't believe they
still let you in after that, Sean.
I don't know who would let me in. I don't know. They must have missed some things. But, the guards, they came on the bus and, took our IDs and just made sure that everybody was who they were supposed to be. And so went in, and I'll tell you this, it's amazing. Cottages, restaurants, staff. It's one of the most staffed I don't know, resorts, what you might call it, that I've ever been to. They were all so nice. You could imagine all the gold. I mean, everything is lined in gold. Nowadays, it's turned into actually being a membership resort. And so, it's for those people that can afford $1 million up front and maybe $20,000 a year in dues. But, the interview with Don, I'm collaborating with analysts and economists all over the country all the time. But, like you said, Casey, it's really good to hear the perspective of insiders as well. And, one of the things that I really appreciated is that the discussion stayed really focused on, the current economic environment and mainly the future direction of policy. And it didn't drift too far into politics. So I really appreciated that. He did spend a little time talking about how, they were frustrated, how, they had been treated, and everything that had happened to the family. So he did touch on that, and probably deservingly so. And then he did spend a little time on, what it was like to grow up as a Trump kid, in a billionaire family.
What do you say about that? I can only imagine.
Yeah, it was really good. It was really neat being in Mar-a-Lago, where he and his brother and sister had grown up. He was talking about how, they didn't really realize that they were rich until maybe 8 or 10 years old. And they did have what you would expect in luxuries of a wealthy family. But then at the same time, they were held to very high standards. He talked about a story that I really got a lot of joy from, but he had come back to the house, the family house, on a college break. And he talked about how he had been out with some friends on a Friday night and got home kind of late, and maybe 3 o'clock in the morning on Saturday morning. And then about 5 in the morning, he gets a call from his dad saying, "Don, why aren't you at the office yet?" And this is at 5 o'clock in the morning. And Don Jr. says, "I don't know, Dad. It's 5 o'clock on Saturday morning. Why are you at the office?" And Dad says, "Because the world doesn't stop at Saturday at 5 o'clock in the morning, Don." And so that kind of helped us, with setting the tone of how that really was to be a child in a Trump family. He talked about going to construction sites with the father and, being put to work. He said that, he and his brother and sister, they for sure have cleaned their share of bathrooms through the years.
Okay.
Yeah.
You think he's telling the truth on that one?
You know what? I felt like he was being real. I felt like he was telling it like it is. I have a feeling that there's a lot more of those stories. He said that the childhood was very focused on education. And one thing he said that I was really taken back by, and I really appreciated, is that he emphasized that from his father's perspective, it wasn't the university in the educational process that was the biggest priority. It was experience that should always be the focus. And so I really took that to heart. I really enjoyed that. And it came off very real. He seemed very sincere. He seemed very humble. He was different than what you've seen him on television giving speeches. And so really felt like we were just in this small group just shooting it back and forth. But the majority of the interview was directed towards, the economy and philosophy in moving forward, the administration's philosophy in moving forward. A lot of the issues that were talked about are issues that we hear about, through the news, but it was really good to get some insider perspective on that. The administration really prioritized when they first went in reducing regulation and, making trade deals. That was one of the biggest focuses, and it's kind of come through. I mean, we've watched it happen. Energy production, IPO registrations this year through the roof, all kinds of housing projects and manufacturing projects coming through. So that was a lot of fun to hear about their initial intentions on the trade deals. A lot of people were very concerned about tariffs, and we figured out over time and experience, and hindsight makes it real easy, but tariffs did not have the effect that a lot of us thought they would have. Sounds like the administration already knew that. but it brought in a ton of investments from foreign investors. So a lot of what they had prioritized moving in has really come to fruition, and they're just really focused now on continuing to lead. Leading in AI, there's a lot of issues that are up for grabs right now that they feel that are critical that we win the race. AI being a very big one. Digital currency is one that they are hyper-focused on. Space dominance, they believe that whoever controls the space is probably going to be the superpower moving forward. Mm-hmm. And, a big message from Don Jr. was that, a lot of these things that the administration has put into place and is focused on, they're going to take time to materialize in the economy. And so that was a big piece of it. We want to make sure that we are maybe bringing some common sense to all these things and giving a little time.
Yeah, well, it sounds like a very fascinating conversation, Sean. Sounds like an incredible experience overall. And I think it's always interesting when we get the chance to talk with people who have spent their lives around business and wealth and big decisions like you were just talking about. So when you were with Donald Trump Jr. at Mar-a-Lago, he was asked about something that impacts just about everybody at some point, and that's retirement, which is what our show is all about. So I want us to take a listen to this clip.
Start planning for it. Again, there's so many unknowns that happen in life that you can't plan for. You may want to work forever and you may think you're going to be able to, and then, something happens, an accident, a health problem, whatever it may be. So you got to plan for that. There's so much you can do with proper planning to avoid taxes and whatever it may be, to be able to make sure that, the things that you created oftentimes as a family actually ends up in the hands of that family and not the government. You definitely have to plan for that and stay ahead.
So I'm curious about your thoughts on his thoughts, Sean. What does it really take to build a retirement plan that is going to hold up even when life doesn't always go according to our plan?
Yeah, it's such a important and I really appreciated him coming from that perspective. I wasn't sure. Look, you grew up with $1 billion. What is there to plan for?
Right.
But he did get it. He did understand. It seems like he, a lot of it coming from his dad, they're in tune with what's going on out there. And so I really appreciated that perspective, and that concept. It's one that's so important and one that can have a significant impact on a family's, quality of life in retirement and into future generations. I think that, to your question, Casey, it really all starts with really coming to terms with who you are, what's important to you, what you want to accomplish, the relationships you want to enhance, the causes you want to support, what's on your bucket list, what do you want to look back and have achieved, and then, of course, really dialing in what those concerns are. Recognizing that income is what will drive lifestyle, and it is what's going to provide what's important to you. And there's a lot of strategy to income. So planning that out is important. There's a lot of risk to income. Some people, need more guarantees. Others feel better about working on probabilities that the markets will provide more than some of those guarantees might. So getting that strategy is really important. Identifying the elements that are going to affect that income is paramount. When you look at taxes are everywhere. Taxes are all up into everything. But taxes are the biggest erosion factor of the goal, which is spendable income. And so we've got to be hyper-focused on that. Investments have to be allocated based on income. We can never set ourselves up to, have to take money out of an account that's gone down. Think of that as paying a penalty. Inflation, cost of living adjustments, they all have to be considered. And then a big piece of, what you said, Casey, in trying to build a plan and create an environment that holds up through all different circumstances is really accounting for those obstacles and hurdles, those challenges that could derail your plan. A spouse passing early, when we're married, usually most of us are going to have a minimum of 2 incomes. And if one of us pass early, we're going to lose one of those. And we've got to know how the other one fares in that kind of a situation. Making sure that we're accounting for medical and long-term care expenses in the future. Longevity is, one of the areas that people are concerned about, outliving their money. So that's all got to be planned for. If you take this position or this perspective of being intentional, understanding these different challenges, obstacles, hurdles that could come your way, and recognize what the consequence of those happening are. How are you going to feel it? Look, there's a lot of them that will be okay. We're okay with handling them if they come. And we'll just shoulder that risk. But, there's some of them that we just can't be having those consequences, and we might want to be intentional about implementing some type of a strategy that'll help us mitigate those consequences. Really come from the position of being proactive versus reactive. It's really, really important, and it's what's going to get us through those difficult times. Making sure that our voice is heard. If we become incapacitated, we got to make sure that the way we want it to be is the way it's going to be. When we pass away, we've got to know that everybody knows what we want to happen with our stuff. And so those estate documents are such an essential part of that plan. Of course, always consider your risk tolerance, in all of these areas. Plan design should really allow for a confident and stress-free retirement. All of these elements have to be working together in harmony. This thing's just one big puzzle, and sometimes what makes it complicated is that one piece of the puzzle is affecting another piece of the puzzle, and how we understand and see that could make all the difference. And look, this could feel overwhelming.
Yeah.
If you're having trouble putting all of this together, or maybe you have some questions, I want to invite you to come into the office. We can take some time to talk through your situation, help you get some insight into how what you're doing now is affecting you now and into the future. And we may have some recommendations that you can use to put yourself in a better position. And if you're one of our first 5 callers, we're going to provide you with your own individual retirement planning assessment. We're going to take a deep dive into all those elements you have to be considering in retirement. So give us a call, 559-847-0039. Give us a call right now. Our team is standing by right now.
Sean, with all those factors that you just went through and talked through with us, there are so many moving parts, so many moving pieces to this retirement puzzle. Do you find that people tend to overestimate how prepared they are for retirement or underestimate it? I'm curious.
Wow, that's such a great question, because that happens on both sides. And we see it all the time. And both of those can be just as detrimental. Mm-hmm. The more concerned that they are, sometimes that creates procrastination, and they just don't want to deal with it. And I find that if they just come in and have a discussion, they're going to find that maybe they weren't as underserved as they thought they were. Maybe they're in a little bit better position, and maybe they just need to add a few things to their plan. But then on the other hand, if they feel overconfident, they're not working these things out, they're not looking at the big picture, maybe they're not looking into the future well enough, that could create some problems as well.
Mm-hmm. I want to remind you of our phone number, 559-847-0039. If our conversation today has you thinking about your own path, whether you're headed in the right direction or maybe you just want a second set of eyes, this is a great time to sit down with Sean, have that conversation about where you are and where you want to go. 559-847-0039. Or you can find us online at masonstreetretirementinsights.com. Sean, I know another thing that Don Trump Jr. touched on while you were there was the current market and what it means for people who are getting closer and closer to retirement. So I want us to take a listen to another clip from Don Jr.
Well, listen, I mean, I think if you're looking at, the S&P and you're looking at some of the indices, you have incredible performance. Mm-hmm. I think, from a longer term perspective, so many of the things that this administration and my father are trying to do are really long-term plays, right? You hear about the chaos on a day-to-day basis, and, that's sort of life. But, the reality, when you look at the, even the inward investment that's coming into America, getting other countries to build here, the production, the manufacturing, it's like, well, all those things happen. Oh, I haven't felt it in my wallet yet. Yeah, because they got to build a factory to start the manufacturing. Right. To do, these are things that, candidly, the person who's probably going to get the credit for it in the end, at least at the time, is going to be the president in 28 or the president in 32. When these things get there and they really turn on the economic engine of the United States. So I think you got to look at all of the things that are happening and realize, well, just because you have the press release doesn't mean you're going to feel, we sort of live in an instant gratification society.
That's right.
People, they want it now, and that's not how it works in the real
time.
world. And so I think my father's one of the few people in politics who is really playing a long game, not making a bad decision, at the expense of our children's future to get, to win an election in 2 weeks, but to do what's actually going to be right for 10, 20, 50 years. He's playing that long game. And I think that long game is going to be really important for America.
So, Sean, what I'm hearing is patience and long-term thinking, but that's hard for people who are 60 to 65 and feel like time matters now more than ever for them. So how should they be processing what's happening right now without the panic?
Yeah, it's a really good point. And, Don made some really good points and, pointing out that, we are in that instant gratification type culture. And, maybe just stepping back for a second and really looking at things in the big picture and try and get a bigger picture view will help. Applying some common sense is a good thing. And, sometimes what makes it difficult in my job, in my position, and people that are in similar positions is a lot of people will look at the market in that same way, and they'll worry about a few weeks. I love how Don, talked about the fact that, a lot of these policies, a lot of these things are being implemented. Look, this can give us an opportunity to have optimism. It can make us feel like things might be moving in the right direction. I do get, though, so much of this is based on that media-driven political landscape. Last year in April, we had what was called Liberation Day. And, I experienced it for myself that, people got really concerned about a drop in the market because tariffs were being implemented. And there was a significant drop, but it recovered in 6 or 8 weeks. And then the year ended with a 17% positive return. This year, it's the Iran conflict that people are up in arms about. And if you look at it, the market is up. There's so much to be optimistic about. I think that we just got to take a step back and apply maybe some common sense. But, Casey, to your question, those who are retiring soon, it's understandable that they'd be concerned. But, the question is why? When people have concerns, I really like to dial in and make sure that they're recognizing why they're concerned about it. Obviously, when we're getting ready to retire soon, that means for most of us that we're probably going to start using our resources. If we're 40 years old, we don't have to worry so much about what's happening in the market. We know we have plenty of time, and we believe that market corrections are going to recover. And that period of time is called time horizon, and we're close to retirement. Those time horizons start to shorten, and we do recognize that corrections that come now, maybe we don't have as much time to recover. This reminds me of Brad and Jennifer. We started working with them, 5 or 6 weeks ago. They wanted to retire in 1 year. That's their goal. They had a lot going on. There was tax strategies that we need to implement. They had some properties that they were going to sell. But those weren't the main concerns because they knew that mathematically we could plan for those and implement strategy after some discussion that we went through. What Jennifer was really most concerned about was running out of money. She had experienced and watched her parents go through that, and they actually had to help the parents. And she did not want to put that burden on her kids. And, Brad was really most concerned about what's going on currently. What's going on with the markets. He remembers 2008, and he puts himself in that situation that where if 2008 happened right now, how would they fare? How would life be? And so as part of their comprehensive retirement plan, we included a designed income strategy. We attached to it a reasonable rate of return that fit their risk tolerance. But in doing that, Jennifer was really able to see how that income or those resources were going to last. They weren't going to run out. Those resources were going to last them well past age 100. And then for Brad, we explained how we positioned their risk. And I think this is really important when you start thinking about people that are concerned about retiring and what's going on in the current environment. When we look at time horizons, most of us put time horizon as a result of ourselves, meaning we're getting ready to retire and we're getting ready to spend the money. So now we don't have the time that it takes for market corrections to recover. But maybe if you change that thought process a little bit, if you start thinking about time horizons in the way that each dollar has its own time horizon, things will change. Your thought process will change all that, and it'll be less concerning. We explained to Brad how we put into position for them a guaranteed income strategy that was going to pay most of their necessities, those staple type expenses. But then for the rest of their spending and their quality of life and their advanced lifestyle, we allocated the rest of those dollars in investments utilizing a bucketing strategy. We used the bucketing strategy to earmark dollars to be spent at different periods of time. And what that allowed us to do is push the risk into the future, meaning the dollars that they were going to spend in the first couple years had very little risk. There was very little chance of any fluctuation. So they had nothing to worry about for those current dollars in their next couple years of spending. And then dollars that they were going to spend in 7-10 years, we were really able to go more aggressive with those dollars because, as we talked about before, they had more time to go through that roller coaster and recover in the case of any market corrections. So, Jennifer and Brad, they really got to see a view of what that cash flow looked like. And I believe that, their confidence is where it needs to be at this point.
If people have similar concerns, if they're seeing some of themselves in Brad and Jennifer in their situation, is this something you can dive into in that introductory retirement planning assessment?
Yeah, we really want to. And, everybody's so different. Nobody's going to be the same. Of course, we all have a very similar goal that we all are looking to generate as many spendable dollars from our resources as possible throughout our lifetime. But the way that we do that is going to be different from one another. We all have different risk tolerances. We're all going to use the money for different things. So to come in and have that discussion and just kind of talk out what your situation is, I think that you'll get a lot of insight into what the possibilities are.
We just want to remind you that you do not have to figure this out alone. Sean is here to help, and it all starts with a conversation. So we want to remind you of our phone number, 559-847-0039. If you have $500,000 or more saved for retirement, and this conversation has you questioning how prepared you really are, or whether your plan is built to withstand whatever may come next, or if it sparked anything else that you'd like to talk with Sean about today, we encourage you to reach out, claim one of these spots that Sean has on his calendar to have a conversation with him all about you, all about your specific situation. 559-847-0039, or get connected with us online as well. We are at Mason Street RetirementInsights.com. We'll give you a few minutes now to make that call while we take a quick break, but don't go anywhere. Lots more is still ahead here on Mason Street Retirement Insights. We'll be right back.
There are many lessons we learn as we're growing up. One was, don't touch the hot stove. Ow. Today, Uncle Sam is trying to keep that lesson alive with your 401k. Think about it. Don't touch your 401k before 59 and a half. You'll pay a penalty. Hot stove. Oof. Or don't touch your 401k. You'll have to pay taxes. You'll get burned. Ouch. You've been saving in this account your whole life. Why shouldn't you use it for retirement? So the financial industry can keep charging you fees, or the government can roll up your tax bill? Come on. Sean Mason at Mason Street Wealth Management believes in letting you enjoy your money. You worked for it, you saved it. Let's give you the confidence and permission to spend it. And there are plenty of options for you to explore. Go to masonstreetwealthmanagement.com to find out more. It's a no-obligation meeting to talk about planning and enjoying your retirement. Or call 559-847-0039. That's 559-847-0039. And let's give you some financial oven mitts for your 401k.
You have found Mason Street Retirement Insights. My name is Casey, and I am here with my buddy Sean Mason, president of Mason Street Wealth Management right here in Fresno, asking for his ideas on things that you can be working on as you get closer to your retirement. As you are listening today and you've got questions, want to remind you of our phone number. That's 559-847-0039. You can schedule some time to sit down with Sean for that introductory retirement planning assessment. 559-847-0039. Or we are also online. That website's masonstreetretirementinsights.com. All right, Sean, let's get into some retirement talk, shall we?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's do it. So we talk a lot on this show about how retirement strategies evolve and how what made sense, 10 or 15 years ago might not be the best fit for retirees today. And that idea really stood out to me when I saw a new study this week that asked financial advisors if they are adjusting retirement plans for our current economy. Now, about 65% of advisors said yes, and many of them are using a strategy they've never used before, an annuity. So I'm wondering, Sean, if you can talk to us about what it is about the annuity that is appealing to retirees today, where it might not have been so appealing 10 years ago, because we know annuities have gotten a bad rap in the past. They've been a little controversial. So talk to us about what's changed here.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And, with advisory firms changing strategy, when we move or transition from working years into retirement years, everything changes. I should say everything except for the need for income, right? Because income is going to continually drive lifestyle. But the priorities change. And we have to recognize that the investment strategy that we use, the tax strategy that we use, they're all going to be dependent on the income strategy. And so investment strategy has to change based on priorities in retirement. But then, the current economic environment also matters. And so if you as an individual investor have the skill set to understand the economic environment and the data that goes along with it, you might make some changes. If you don't, you might be better off with just, sticking with a specific strategy and structure that'll help you through good and bad times.
So when we say annuities have evolved, what would you say is the biggest difference that retirees would actually notice today as opposed to how they were set up 10 years ago?
Yeah, that's a big one, especially right now. And the reason I say that is annuities are extremely interest rate sensitive. And so what I mean by that, depending on what we're using annuity for, we might be utilizing annuity for growth. We could be utilizing annuity for guaranteed income. The deal or the benefits that an annuity can deliver is going to be based on the interest rate environment at the time that you sign up or start the annuity. The higher the interest rate environment, the higher the interest rates are at the moment that you sign up for the annuity, the higher that guaranteed income can be for the rest of your life. The higher the growth opportunity can be for the rest of your life. The reason for that is the annuity company is actually buying a 10-year treasury bond as the foundation for those guarantees that they're offering. And recognize today, 10-year treasury bonds are paying 4%, whereas 5 or 6 years ago, treasury bonds were paying 1%. So there's a lot more they can do with 4% compared to 1%. We haven't seen interest rates like this in 40 years. We probably are not going to see them again in our lifetime. So if an annuity is something that's a benefit, it's something that you definitely want to start getting educated about now. But look, as is with any investment, an annuity might be a perfect solution for what you're trying to accomplish, but it might not have any fit in your plan whatsoever. So it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish and what your exact situation is. And then you also have to understand that there's different types of annuities. I was talking with Daryl and Marjorie a couple weeks ago, and Daryl's brother has an annuity, and he was saying that his brother just really doesn't like that annuity. And so he had a copy of it. He had brought a copy of it because he wanted to see if he couldn't help his brother with it. And I found that this was a variable annuity. There weren't extremely great investment options in that annuity available. Fees were, I believe they were right at 3% a year for the fees. This annuity had been delivering about a 3.5% rate of return. It's real hard to get a rate of return out of an annuity when the investment options aren't great and you're paying 3%. So we started talking about a different type of annuity and started to try and fit and figure out if maybe annuity would benefit them in any way. Look, I was meeting with Johnny the other day, and he had come in and was really concerned that he didn't have a pension, and he thought that that was a real negative in his plan.
Yeah.
And so I showed him how we could actually take a portion of his resources and buy a pension. And he really liked that. And when we did the numbers, it really made sense for him. But then it wasn't just a guaranteed income annuity that was going to benefit him. We actually started working in his plan and designing strategy and figured out that some Roth conversions would be a significant benefit to him long term. And as we tried to enhance the benefits of those conversions, we found that a specific annuity designed for Roth conversions was going to increase the benefits significantly. So there's a lot of different types of annuities out there. Right now is really the timing that you want to go and start to figure out if there's a good fit somewhere in your plan for one of these annuities.
So this change in the annuity landscape that we've seen over the past decade, Sean, do you think it's more about the product itself changing, or is this about the retiree's mindset changing? Or maybe is it a combination of both of those things?
I'm finding, that's a really great question, because I'm finding more and more that people are probably more concerned about income and running out of money or running out of income to fulfill the lifestyle that they're looking for than anything else. And that's where annuities can really come in and make a big difference. I don't know. Maybe it's mindset. I don't know really what made that change, but 100%. The interest rate environment is delivering much bigger income, guaranteed income for life than they were 5, 6, 8 years ago. And this is why I encourage you to come in and have a discussion and talk this out. What's good for one scenario or situation might not be good for another, and it just gives us an opportunity to come in. It gives us an opportunity to have a discussion to really talk through what you're trying to accomplish and what you're concerned about. So give us a call. The team is standing by, 559-847-0039. We're going to walk through your situation. We're going to get an understanding about what you're trying to accomplish, what concerns you, and we'll just look and see if any of these annuity strategies might make a difference.
559-847-0039. If you are sitting here wondering whether some of these newer strategies, including annuities, actually belong in your plan, actually make sense for you, that is a perfect reason to sit down, talk it through with a professional. Sean is here. He's eager to meet with you. He's eager to see just how he can help. So if you've got $500,000 or more in investable assets, pick up the phone, give us a call right now, 559-847-0039. Like Sean said, the team is standing by right now, ready to take your call and get you scheduled for your retirement planning assessment. Completely complimentary, 559-847-0039, or you can head over to MasonStreetRetirementInsights.com. Now, I've got another study I want to talk with you about, Sean, because one thing that always jumps out at me is how often regret shows up when we talk about retirement. Not always about how much we've saved, but about the decisions that maybe we've made under pressure. So this next study by Nationwide Retirement Institute, it was of recent retirees, and it highlighted a concern we've seen before. About 55% of recent retirees regret how they saved, and that's, not surprising. They wish they'd started sooner and put away more. That's a tale as old as time, but that's not all that this survey found. And we've got Carrie Hannon on Yahoo Finance talking about another interesting find. Let's take a listen.
I think that what happens is, and what this study shows is people who are getting nervous like this, especially these new retirees, they're actually starting to pay attention to their investment portfolios, which is fine on one hand, but they're making changes. And we all know that often might not be your best move, to go shifting things around just when things are a bit rocky.
So I'm wondering, Sean, if you could talk to us about why those pre-retirement years or those early retirement years are the worst possible time for somebody to be making emotional changes to their portfolio.
Yeah, and it seems that it doesn't matter how much money somebody has. We always feel like we didn't do enough, or we wish that we got started earlier. It's interesting, the dynamic we go through in the transition between working and retirement. I'm always talking to people about that transition phase is 5 to 10 years, and the earlier that I can get with them, the better off it's going to be.
Yeah.
But they definitely go through phases, and so one phase is we have gone through and we've saved and we've been disciplined and we've put money into those accounts. And we've grown those assets over time. And now we start to figure out or start to think about that, hey, maybe this retirement is a reality, because maybe I've saved up enough and maybe I will have saved up enough by the time retirement comes. And that allows us to start dreaming. It allows us to start thinking about what we might want to do, what we might want to accomplish, the relationships that we want to affect, the causes that we want to support. And that's exciting times. And then we get closer and closer to retirement, and the reality sets in that, do I have enough money? How do I do it? How does Medicare work? How am I going to determine when I start Social Security? All of these realizations start coming through, and it seems that that's when people really start, if they hadn't already, that's when they really start to get concerned about the management of their assets, especially their 401ks, IRAs, 403bs. We really start to see people try and lean in and take a little bit more of a part. And that can be concerning. Casey, to your question, and Carrie made a good point, that's a critical phase. Events seem to be bigger than ever before at that moment in time. I was talking, Jeff and Sarah came in, I think it was the second week of March.
Okay.
So just a few weeks ago. We were just a couple weeks into the Iran conflict. Mm-hmm. And Jeff told me that he hadn't really managed his account. He kind of set it and forgot it for years and years. But then earlier this year, he heard about this Iran conflict and he started to get concerned. And he actually changed his whole portfolio into a bond portfolio. And he did this all because of the Iran conflict. But if the Iran conflict would have happened 4 years ago, he wouldn't even recognize to have made any adjustments. Mm-hmm. It's all because he's entered that critical phase.
Yeah.
I asked Sarah, I said, Sarah, how do you feel about Jeff making those changes that is going to affect, or that could affect, your lifestyle in retirement? And then I asked Jeff the same question. I said, Jeff, how do you feel about making those changes? Do you feel like you have the skill set? What was the reasoning behind it? And what I found really interesting is that Jeff, for one, had no way to explain the reasoning for making those adjustments, and Sarah became very uncomfortable.
Ooh. And Sean became a marriage counselor.
Uh-oh, here we go. There is a little bit of that sometimes. But being intentional, having intentional strategy and structure is so important during this critical phase. It's not a time to start making adjustments. Putting a plan in place and staying focused on that plan. Look, if you have the skill set to understand the data, to start making changes based on the current environment, that's okay. But if you don't, it's certainly something you're not going to want to do. Most people aren't successful doing that. If you feel the need for management in that particular situation, get with a consultant, get with somebody that knows what they're doing.
How often do you see people make a move kind of like Jeff did on his own and then come back and say, I wish I hadn't done that? Does that happen often?
You know what? People come in, and it depends on what's going on in the environment, right? And it depends where they are in those phases. It's often when people are in that critical phase, and I haven't met with them yet. I'm very fortunate that the families that I work for, They don't go make adjustments. They ask me a lot. They ask me about what I feel about what's going on. They ask me if I feel that they are invested properly based on the current environment. But they're asking me and they're getting counsel from somebody who is a professional and knows what they're doing.
Right. Well, take this as your sign to maybe get that conversation started for yourself. 559-847-0039. If you're nearing retirement, maybe you're already there, but you just want a plan that's going to help you stay disciplined when things do get a little rocky. This is exactly why Sean's here, and it all is going to start for you when you pick up the phone. You give us a call today to get set up for your complimentary retirement planning assessment. 559-847-0039. Remember, there's no obligation here either. This is just a discovery conversation and a chance for you to get a better understanding of where you are and where Sean can help you go. So if you have $500,000 or more saved for retirement, the time to call is right now. 559-847-0039, or head online to MasonStreetRetirementInsights.com and click that Contact Us button. All right, on top of all that, Sean, then you add one more layer, the headlines and what they are all telling us is going to happen, and things can get really crazy. I mean, if you pay attention long enough, you're going to hear every possible prediction. We've got boom, bust, crisis, catastrophe. For instance, the author Robert Kiyosaki, he wrote the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He recently warned that baby boomers could end up homeless or living in RVs because Social Security and Medicare are broke, which we know is not true. So I wanted to look at a few other bold predictions that have happened over the year. And I found that Warren Buffett said in 2023 that an incredible period of economic prosperity would be over by the end of the year. Gloom and doom economist Harry Dent, he predicted a major market crash in 2023 and claimed Nvidia would fall 90 to 98%. Market was up about 20% that year. And if we go all the way back to 2004, a writer trashed a new stock offering saying the company would not maintain market share. And that IPO was Google. So my point to all this being, Sean, is that I'm curious how you help your clients tune out all the noise that we're talking about and really stay focused when scary headlines like this start flying around. What's your approach? What are your conversations like with your clients when they get a little squirrely?
Yeah, I'll tell you, headlines, media, all the noise, it's the biggest adversary for a investor, especially somebody going into retirement. It's probably the biggest cause by far more than any market correction of retirement defeat. At minimum, reduction of retirement lifestyle. Look, it's because, fear sells, right? Mm-hmm. They're not going to talk about the greatness because people don't tune in to hear the good. People tune in to hear the bad. When you hear people like Harry Dent who are talking doom and gloom, eventually they're going to be right. Somebody predicted the 2008 fallout. But they had been predicting that for 20 years. Mm-hmm. The problem is nobody has the crystal ball. Nobody knows the timing. You have to be able to look at the data. You have to understand what the economic environment is. Everybody was going to talk about a certain event. Last April in 2025, it was Liberation Day when Trump put the tariffs in force. Everybody thought the sky was falling. Look what happened. Market goes down 4% and ends up 17% ahead for the year. Mm-hmm. Look, these people are always going to be trying to sell their story. They're always trying to be out for clickbait. It's just something that you cannot tune into. It's never the market that's the problem. It's always the lack of preparedness and then the emotional reaction that creates the problem. Mm-hmm. We want to be proactive. We want to have structure. We want to have strategy in place. If you do that, then you're always going to be good during the good and bad. It's always about being prepared and proactive and never emotionally reactive. Mm-hmm. I was talking to Bonnie, a few weeks ago, and she was telling me how her mother last year, and I brought up Liberation Day on purpose because Bonnie was telling me how her mother had been hearing the headlines, had been hearing about how tariffs were going to just destroy the economy. And so she got completely out of the market. She actually went into short-term treasury bonds. She was right for about the first 2 weeks. The problem is she felt, and she was on the wrong side of politics, she felt that because Trump was in office and all the headlines that have been out there, that Trump was going to ruin the economy and She really missed out. She missed out on a lot of growth. So, and that was all due to headlines and the media attention that she was listening to.
So the danger is not really in the headline itself. The danger is in how we react to it, right?
It's really well put, isn't it? It's never about the headline, because there's always headlines like you just look, I'm not going to put Warren Buffett in that category. He made a prediction, but I don't believe Warren Buffett is out there trying to stir the pot.
Right.
He probably truly believed that, but there's a lot of, pundits, journal writers, report writers. They're trying to stir the pot. They're trying to get you to look at their stuff and hopefully sign up as a member. And they're going to put you in a position of fear because they're going to try and convince you that they have the solution. And they never have the solution when they're coming from a position of fear.
Well, and I had to do a little digging to find some of these predictions that never came true. So why do you think we don't hear as much about predictions that never end up coming to fruition?
Yeah, why do we never hear about these people that made the prediction last year and that were wrong, right? It's a good question. I do not know the answer to that.
Well, what is it about these scary headlines that make them feel more believable to us than the good news? It's even, when you watch the nightly news, it's all the doom and gloom first. And then at the very last minute, it's like, and in good news tonight, and there's one story.
And that's when we get up to...
That's when you go make dinner.
Yeah. Yep. That's for sure. I don't know the answer to that. What is it about psychology that drives us to listen to the negative? We get this fear and then we want the solution. We don't need a solution to anything that's positive, right? This is why it's so important to have somebody in your corner. It's good to have a professional in your corner that can help talk through the emotions, because the emotions are your biggest adversary. And so I really encourage you to come in and have a discussion with us. For our first 5 callers, we're going to create your very own comprehensive retirement planning assessment. We're going to talk about all of those elements that you need to be identifying for retirement: taxes, investments, estate planning. We're going to give you the opportunity to get a better insight in what your situation is. So give us a call, 559-847-0039. Our team is standing by. And they'll help you find a good time on the calendar.
559-847-0039. Headlines are always going to come and go, but a solid plan and a trusted partner to walk with you on your journey is what's going to keep you grounded. So if you have $500,000 or more saved for retirement and you're ready to get the conversation about your financial future started, 559-847-0039 is what you need to pick up the phone and dial right now. That's going to connect you with one of our Mason Street teammates who are standing by right now. They're ready to take your call, and then they will help you find that next convenient time on the calendar to talk directly with Sean. And remember, this can be on the phone or in person or on Zoom to start you out, whatever you're comfortable with. But this is just a discovery conversation all about you, all about your specific situation, so that Sean can assess just how he can help you move forward on your retirement journey. Our space is limited, though, so the time to act is right now, 559-847-0039, or find us online. We are at masonstreetretirementinsights.com. Retirement is drawing closer for Gen Xers. The oldest in this group are now 60, but an article I saw this week at usatoday.com was titled, "For Gen X, Retirement Bites." It said that Gen Xers don't think they've saved enough for retirement. Gen Xers wish they had started saving sooner. They fear outliving their savings, and they're also worried about a stock market crash because they lived through the Great Recession. So, Sean, with the oldest Gen Xers now just 5 to 10 years from retirement, what do you say when they confront you with the uncertainties that they have about their retirement?
Yeah, right. And I read that article too. I don't know that. Oh, and by the way, I'm a Gen Xer. I'm on the older end of the generation. But I don't think these concerns are necessarily limited to any specific generation. Through the 22 years of working with people on their financial situation, I've learned that we go through phases of concerns based on our age. And most of us, somewhere in our late 40s, maybe early 50s, we start to recognize there will be another chapter. And we call that retirement, probably because we're watching our parents in retirement. And Gen Xers, they just happen to be in this phase right now. They're reaching out to us every day for consultation because of those concerns you mentioned. And for good reason. It's essential to know how long your savings will last and how taxes and the market are going to affect your income that you generate from your savings. Mistakes in projecting inflation can significantly reduce your lifestyle or put you in jeopardy of running out of money too early. So there are many elements you have to plan for.
Yeah, I know that these are conversations that you're having every single day in your office, Sean. And I think as the generations age, needs change. So I'm curious what that is when it comes to the Gen Xers that you are working with. What's the biggest factor that differentiates them from your baby boomer clients?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And we're in a really unique period right now. We call it the Great Wealth Transfer. It means that, baby boomers, that generation actually holds the majority of the wealth in the country. And they're reaching the age to where they're going to start, and they already have started, passing those dollars on to their kids who are the X generation. And that's going to continue into the millennial generation. It's projected that it's about, or maybe north of $120 trillion over the next 20 years that'll be passed on to these next two generations. I was talking with Dave and Jen just last week, and I asked them, and we met for the first time, and I asked them what their concerns are. And Dave brought up something really interesting. He said, navigating inheritance. And I thought that was brilliant how he kind of framed the process of inheritance and estate planning. They're going to inherit several $1 million. And as we went through in discussions, we figured out that, their parents, who they're going to be inheriting money from, they might not necessarily have everything set up to make sure that everything passes and transfers efficiently. And so we actually scheduled their parents in addition to them. Wow. To come in and have some discussions and just make sure that everything is sitting right. It's projected that through this great wealth transfer, there's going to be billions of dollars lost because of planning mistakes and just poor transfer strategies. And the beneficiaries of those losses are going to be federal and state governments. So we certainly didn't sign up for that. I can't say enough how important having an estate plan in place is. It can be the difference of hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxes. And some people, depending on the situation, might just need a simple living trust. And then there's other situations where we might require multiple trusts and multiple strategies. But I encourage our listeners to get counsel and be sure to think about your parents as well. And I should note that this is one of those things we tend to procrastinate on. But that's not a good idea, especially in this situation. We all know life can change overnight.
Yeah, we have opened up those 5 spots on the calendar just for our radio listeners today with $500,000 or more saved for retirement. So give us a call right now. Let's set up a time for your initial phone conversation with Sean. This is a no fee, no obligation initial step in your planning process. So again, that number to reach us, it's 559-847-0039. If you are 5 to 10 years from retirement, this is where you are really going to see the power of this kind of planning really take effect for you. We want to show you what Mason Street Wealth Management can do for you. So let's put a time on that calendar for your initial assessment with Sean. 559-847-0039 or MasonStreetRetirementInsights.com. Sean, thank you so much for sharing with us about this incredible opportunity that you had. If you had to wrap this up, if you had to put a bow on your experience, what would it be? What do you want to leave our listeners with?
It's really important to me that our community knows that we are here to serve you. We are here to help you make this thing as great as it can possibly be. We so care about your success, and we want you to keep coming back. We're going to see you next weekend, but I want to just wish everybody a happy Memorial Day. Looks like the weather's going to hold up, and so get outside and just have a great time.
Mason Street Wealth Management, MSWM, is a registered investment advisor, and the opinions expressed by MSWM on this show are their own and do not reflect the opinions of Motivate Investments. Registration is not an endorsement by securities regulators. Investment advisory services are offered through Motivate Investments, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. The information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for any individual. Listeners are encouraged to seek advice from a qualified tax, legal, or investment advisor to determine whether any information presented may be suitable for their specific situation. Past performance is not indicative of future performance. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance products, including annuities. Offered through Sean A. Mason, California, insurance license number 0B54860. The firms are separate entities. Annuity guarantees rely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing insurance company and are not offered by Motivate Investments. Read your contract for restrictions, limitations, or penalties. MSWM is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if MSWM is licensed in your state, please call 559-892-0002.